City of Bel Air Beach meeting March 3rd, starting at 6 p.m. City of Bel Air Beach meeting starting at 6 p.m. March 3rd at 6 p.m. Audio test. Testing the audio. Can you hear me?
Yes.
City of Bel Air Beach meeting on March 3rd, 6 p.m. Using Shure microphones to check the audio.
evening, everyone, and welcome. It's 6 p.m., March the 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting will come to order. This evening's invocation is presented by Councilmember Frank Mayer.
Thank you, Mayor. Our Father who art in heaven, please hear this prayer. As our city council gathers, we seek your divine guidance and wisdom. May this opening prayer set the tone for a productive and harmonious discussion of the agenda before us. Let your presence inspire this council to make decisions that benefit our community and promote unity. While our city is recovering from the great devastation of 2 past storms, which many of the city are still seeking to recover, keep government intervention out of our lives unless it's truly to help those who have suffered from these past storms. For those who spare damage, please enlighten them with compassion and understanding while the city moves forward in its recovery of those that have suffered. Help them understand while you created the world in 7 days, government can take up to a year to approve a simple stop sign at a dangerous intersection. In Jesus' name, your Son, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Now, please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Renee, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Frank Bankert.
Present.
Councilmember Kim Shaw Elliott.
Present.
Councilmember Todd Harper.
Present.
Councilmember Jody Shirley.
Here.
Councilmember Anders Wellings.
Present.
Vice Mayor Lloyd Roberts.
Here.
Mayor Dave Gaddis.
Here.
City Manager Kyle Riefler.
Here.
And City Attorney Randy Moore.
Present. Thank you, Renee. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion is made by Frank Bankert. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Shaw Elliott. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Next up is citizens' comments. If a citizen would like to address the council about a topic not already on the agenda, please raise your hand and wait to be called on. We ask that you limit your time to no more than 3 minutes and remember to direct all questions and comments to the council. If any council members would like to respond to citizen comments, I ask that you hold your responses until we reach council comments at the end of the meeting. Would any citizen like to address the council about a topic not already on tonight's agenda? All right, seeing as we have none, citizen comments are now closed. Next, we have a presentation from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, beginning with the monthly law enforcement report.
Good evening, Council. I'm Sergeant Wolf with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Tonight I'm going to present to you the January 2025 monthly analysis. It's not a report as good as December as I had promised, but we did have some instances of crime that occurred in the city. First thing to note, there was 2 assaults that occurred. Those are domestic violence cases, and those have been resolved. And also 1 incident of larceny is actually a vehicle burglary. Nothing was stolen from the vehicle. I just want to remind everybody to try to keep your cars locked as best you can so the perpetrators can't get into your vehicles. It makes it easy for them. And then the last thing we had was a motor vehicle theft. That's kind of a mulligan. Initially, it was reported that the vehicle was stolen. It was later found in the garage. But it happens. You know, I parked my car at the Publix or the Walmart, and I forgot where it was. And I mean, we had a little laugh afterwards, but that's what it is. We did have several people that were arrested. 3 people were arrested on multiple charges. The possession of a firearm by a felon was a particular note. It actually turned out to be a traffic stop that for a tint violation that developed into a driver on a suspended license, and then it developed into there was a child in the car, there were drugs in the car, there was a firearm in the car, so it developed into a lot of charges for that person over a simple traffic violation. But that's a testament to our deputies that are going out there and trying to stop crime as it occurs through the city as people are driving through. The ring unit's been active. They had a saltwater fisheries violation, and then the warrant arrest and another DWSR was found also for another driver driving through the city. All right, there were 433 events that occurred with 535 units that responded. The vast majority of these were direct patrol traffic stops and house checks. And then there's no crashes that occurred in the city for January. There was a minor crash that occurred in February, but since today's reporting, there weren't any major crashes that have occurred. And 118 citations and warnings were issued in the city for January. Does anybody have questions for me?
Council?
I'm just curious, what was the fishery violation?
I don't have that data immediately available. It's probably like undersized fish or something out of season. Our Marinians would probably made that stop, so it would have been on one of the boats. I can find out that information for you though.
Thank you.
Where was the vehicle broken into, in what area? You know?
That was the 1600 block of Gulf Boulevard, 16th Street actually.
Other questions or comments? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Being here tonight. Now we're on to the monthly code enforcement report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, citizens. Steve Clappy for the record. For this month, we had a little uptick in debris and construction nuisance that we had going out through the city. I met with and spoke with Kyle about going around and coming after some of these people that are not cleaning up their yards, mowing their yards. So we had a big uptick on that, but I will tell you that within the last 20 days, a lot of them have corrected the issues. We still have a few more out there. The other issues that we had were, again, some of the unlicensed contracting that we're working well with the county building department and the construction licensing board. Other than that, that's all I have for you.
Council, any questions or comments for Deputy Clapkin?
I have a question. I noticed we got the hibiscus, a boat RV, a pond in the driveway. We are allowing RVs, correct, for houses that were damaged?
As long as they're living in it while their house is being repaired, yes. If they're just storing them, then no.
Okay.
I do have a couple houses that they're just storing boat trailers there and trying to make contact with them and have them move it. But other than that, yeah, as long as they're living in the RVs, they're still allowing that. And I also had a few questions about the pods as far as how long they can be in the driveways. And I told them as long as the houses are being repaired, I mean, we have to let them keep them there. So, but other than that,
So are they still pulling a permit for a pod or getting a approval or something from the city?
right, so they can apply for a permit if they want to bring in a boat or something just temporarily.
Yeah.
But then they have to remove it, so they just can't store it there or keep it there.
So nothing's changed except the few
Right.
houses that have an RV?
Right. I also spoke to Deputy Trump yesterday. He is going to the doctor Friday, so it looks like he'll be back to work on Monday. So it was a pleasure serving you all for the last few months. And like I said, hopefully he gets that clearance and then he'll be back to work.
Appreciate you stepping in. Do we have any other questions or comments?
Thanks for your service.
Thank you, thank you. One other thing I do want to mention, I've gotten complaints about somebody on 22nd feeding the birds. I've tried to let people know, please call the sheriff's office, because when they leave a message here and I get it 3 days later, it doesn't do us any good. That way, if we do have a complaint like that, the road deputies can still go out there and at least document it, forward it to me or Rich, and then we can follow up from there too.
I'm curious about that. If a case like that crops up, which does occasionally, what is it considered a nuisance in our municipal code?
Yes, we do have an ordinance in Bel Air Beach for that, and there is an ordinance. The only thing is I have to have a complainant. So if somebody has a video or pictures, and yes, they complain, we use them as a complainant, we can cite them, and then that way when it goes, if they fight the ticket, or if we go through a special magistrate, we do have a victim who's complaining about the nuisance. So it kind of helps us out a little bit more. But like I said, I had a couple of voicemails here at the City Hall, but they were 2 or 3 days old, so I'm trying to encourage people to call the SO, let them come out, and at least document it, we can follow up on it.
All right, good information.
Okay?
Anything else? No. Thank you, David. We appreciate you.
Have a good evening, thank you.
All right, next up is a presentation from the Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue District by Chief Jeffrey Davidson.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Jeffrey Davidson, Fire Chief for Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue District. The monthly report for the month of February, there were 19 calls for emergency services into Bel Air Beach, including fire alarms, medical calls, and minor motor vehicle accidents. On March 27th, we're going to be co-hosting the Hurricane and Water Safety Expo at Bel Air Beach, right here. In April, the fire department is going to be helping with the bridge cleanup. The new property that we're purchasing on the northern end of Indian Rocks Beach, which is 3 blocks shy of your border, we're finishing up the due diligence. They did the geotechnical aspects today, and as soon as we get that, we'll be scheduling the closing, so hopefully end of April, May for that. And then the Emergency Operations Center and station on the mainland, we are past the 60% design phase. We finished up all the financing. We should have the 90% by next month, and then they'll start applying for permits, and hopefully we'll be breaking ground around June. So we'll make sure you all are invited to the groundbreaking. That's how it's going to be for the Emergency Operations Center during hurricanes and natural disasters and things. And then lastly, after 37 years in the fire service, I'm going to be retiring. March 21st will be my last official day. I'll spend some time with my new grandbaby up in South Carolina. And my first grandbaby, so life changer. If you have grandchildren, you know that. But I wanted to introduce you to Ken Grimes, who has been given a conditional offer to be the next fire chief for Pinellas Suncoast. Some minor things that we have to go through with onboarding, and we're hoping to have him starting hopefully next Monday. There'll be a little overlap between the two of us, and you'll love him. He's a great guy, very knowledgeable, many years in the fire service, and he's got a lot of great attributes to bring to the communities. So, Ken Grimes.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to reaching out and getting to know each and every one of you, and how the district serves you, how we can serve you better, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, those kind of things. So looking forward to getting to know you in the future, and hopefully, like the chief said, I'm not there yet, but hopefully with no snafus, I'll be your next fire chief, and looking forward to serving. I was born on a barrier island south of here, and raised Longboat Key. And if you took where I grew up, my parents bought a 9-unit motel on the beach. And if you take a cut and paste of that and put it here, you wouldn't know the difference. So it's in my DNA, and then my entire fire service career, I served on barrier islands, I served Longboat, and then Key Biscayne, Miami as well. So I feel like this is coming home, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well,
Nice. Welcome. Look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for me?
You'll be well missed.
Yeah,
Same here. And I'll be here for the next few weeks. I'll make sure I come and see you. And then with the ongoing projects, I'm still going to be helping out on those things. And I'll be at the groundbreaking and the new station here to serve Bel Air Beach. I definitely want to be there, and made some great friends along the way, great colleagues as well. So thank you all for everything you've done. Bel Air Beach is an outstanding place to work and live, and definitely to serve. It's been a pleasure. So thank you very much.
Chief Davidson, I'd like to thank you for sticking your neck out there over and over again for Bel Air Beach. I know it's a hard job sometimes, and your efforts have never gone unnoticed. So thank you so much, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. I'll see you soon.
All right, we're on to item 5, which is a presentation of the draft audit presented by Wells, Hauser, and Schatzel, PA. Good evening.
Hello, Mayor, and council members. I'm Peter Schatzel, firm of Wills Hauser Schatzel. I'd like to thank the council and mayor for giving our firm the opportunity to serve as your auditors. As you are aware, this fiscal year, September 30th, 2024, is the first audit that we have conducted for you as your auditors. I'm not as a good speaker as some of the previous speakers, and I tend to muddle through things. I do have a script that I will be following, and as I go through it, if you have any questions at any point in time, I don't mind you raising them as I'm talking. You don't have to wait until the end. As a part of the audit, we did have a presence here. We will end up with somewhere in approximately 420 hours on the audit. But I'd like to report that having conducted the audit, we have concluded that the city of Bel Air Beach, that you do remain in sound financial condition. I'll be going through some of the highlights that basically reflect that you are in sound financial condition. We found your accounting records to be accurate and complete. Your finance department, finance person, she does a very good job. It makes our job a whole lot easier when we have good accounting records to be going through. We did not note any supportable transactions throughout our audit, and we do look at a lot of transactions. We didn't have any disagreements insofar as the accounting policies and accounting principles that are being followed. Your financial statements have to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And in our report to the council, we do opine that your statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And our opinion, which appears on page 1 of the document, I would like to mention to the council that it's a very wordy report. It's pretty much language that we have to use, but the opinion that we render is the highest level of assurance that we can give our clients, and we can, in our opining on your financial statements. Just to give you a sense of where you stood at the end of the year, which would be September 30th, 2024, in the general fund. And just to pause there, in the financial statements, there are what's referred to as government-wide statements, which are presented more in a business-like presentation, and then the fund level statements. And the fund level is the level at which you adopt your budgets. And any report that you would get from your finance department, it's at the fund level. So I don't really comment on the government-wide statements, but rather I comment on the fund level statements. So at the end of September 24, the general fund had $5.28 million. That represented about a $34,000 increase over the year, over the prior year. In your capital projects fund, the combined cash and investments totaled $1.574 million. And that represented almost a $284,000 increase over the year before. And looking at the results of operations, beginning with the general fund, there was an excess of revenues over expenditures of $1,264,000. That's prior to you having transferred. Excuse me. You had transferred $200,000. Sorry, excuse me. You you had transferred $200,000 to the capital projects fund and $1,050,000 to the stormwater fund. So that surplus of $1.264 million, once you reduce that by the transfers out of the general fund, the general fund was pretty much at a break-even level, at about a $14,000 surplus. There was in comparing your amended budget to the actual results, there was a favorable variance, which means that your actual results were an improvement over what had been budgeted. That favorable variance of $466,000, that is comprised of the amount of revenues exceeding budget by about $295,000, and the amount of the general fund expenditures were $171,000 less than what had been budgeted. The general fund revenues compared to 2023 had increased by $247,000. Where that came about is in the area of taxes, which a lot of that would be the ad valorem taxes. There was an increase in taxes of $162,000, and the interest earnings on the city's investments, there was a favorable variance of $125,000. As the revenues increased by $247,000, there was also an increase in your expenditures of $268,000. And that was comprised mainly in the general government, $155,000 increase in expenditures, and in public works, about $149,000. The capital projects fund, in looking at whether your revenues exceed your expenditures, isn't so much a result of operations so much as the amount of capital projects that you had budgeted for, and the monies that were spent on those capital projects. So there was a deficit of $486,000 in the capital projects fund, which was offset by $200,000 coming from the general fund. But one of the major capital projects, which I know that you are certainly very much aware of, having to do with the undergrounding of utilities. In 2024, you expended slightly over $2 million on that project. So that in and of itself basically accounts for the fact why your expenditures exceeded revenues. In looking at the enterprise funds, insofar as the Marina Fund, it operated at about an $8,700 profit. The revenues coming in, both in the Marina Fund and in the Stormwater Fund, as far as the rental of slips and the amount of stormwater collections, those revenues were almost exactly the amount that they had been for the year before. It's important to note that in the Stormwater Fund, extended in fiscal year 2024, we expended $2.7 million on the stormwater and the curb replacement projects. With the amount that you're investing in the stormwater infrastructure, it actually ended up having a negative unrestricted fund balance of about $180,000. was is that as a result of the amount that was expended on the stormwater and curb replacement projects, the actual cash balance in the stormwater fund, it decreased by about $1.4 million. And at the end of the year, it was $311,000 balance. Another somewhat significant report that we issued to you is our auditor's report on compliance. And what we are reporting in that report is that we're looking at are you in compliance with all of your debt instruments? Are you in compliance with the city codification of ordinances? And if you're receiving any grants, are you in compliance with those grants? And in our report on compliance, we did not note any issues of non-compliance. In that report, we also we don't give an opinion on your internal control, but in that report, we are required to, if we find any deficiencies in internal control, we are required to report that to you. And during our testing and what we call our testing transactions and evaluating your accounting policies and procedures and what we call the segregation of duties as far as if there's someone basically approving transactions, approving disbursements. We did not find any instances where we felt that your internal controls had any type of a deficiency. Just to conclude, there were several footnotes that in the report that I wanted to point out to you. I appreciate that this is a very lengthy report, and there's a tremendous amount of information in here. One of the note, it's note K in the report, and it has to do with the interlocal agreement that the city has in regards to the undergrounding of your utilities with Pinellas County. As you are aware, in addition to doing the undergrounding from Bel Air Beach, you also are doing the undergrounding from Bel Air Shores. And the total amount of funding for both cities was just slightly over $4 million. Through the end of September 2024, the city has expended about $3.6 million. Of that $3.6 million, you have not submitted a reimbursement for the full amount. There was approximately $500,000 that you will be submitting reimbursement for. In summary, the amount that is remaining for the city to be reimbursed, which probably will happen in fiscal year 2025, is approximately $930,000 that is left on that grant. At the end of 2024, in addition to your having entered into the annual contract with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, at the end of the year, there's still an outstanding commitment on the contract that you've entered into for the undergrounding. That contract is with the Utility Consultants of Florida. And it's slightly over $1 million commitment. And on the harbor contracting contract is approximately almost $1.5 million that's outstanding on that contract. The only other note we are in the report, we are required to comment on any significant events that happened subsequent to September 30th, 24. And as you all know, the amount of damage caused by Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, the city has incurred in excess of $900,000 of expenses in the whole and debris primarily. And you have applied to FEMA for reimbursement for those expenses that you have incurred. And through this point in time, you have not received a definitive amount as far as how much FEMA is going to be awarded to you. Those are all the comments that I plan on making to you, but I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schatzel. The council, any questions or comments? Yes, Shaw, out here.
Yes, thank you for pointing out the balances that are due to us. And could you expand upon whether we have timely requested those amounts?
Yes. The application for reimbursement is being done in certain phases. So as a phase is completed, we're submitting for reimbursement. But yes, in fiscal year 2024, we submitted for and received about $1,480,000 of reimbursement from the county.
Okay, very good, very good. So that's for the undergrounding, and that's also for, I guess the majority of it is for undergrounding, but we're adding to that now the debris removal, which will be reimbursed in due course, of course.
Right. And those expenditures are totally apart from. They're separate from the interlocal agreement that you have with Pinellas County. And unfortunately, dealing with FEMA can be somewhat of a drawn-out process. But when the city is on top of that and is attempting to recoup all of the expenses that you have incurred.
Very good, thank you.
Any questions?
When you say reimbursement of these funds from the county, you're talking about pennies from Pinellas? Is that the money that we're getting for undergrounding from? It's a separate fund.
Right, and the $4 million that, if you want to refer to it as a grant that was coming from Pinellas County, their funding source was from the penny, the 1 cent surtax.
Just a quick question. On the footnotes, you mentioned we had two pretty large outstanding contract amounts for the undergrounding. But what was remaining to draw was a lot, considerably less. Is that something to be concerned about?
The one contract, the contract with Harbor Contracting, that's not for the undergrounding. Harbor Contract is the contractor that's doing all the stormwater and curb replacement projects.
Is that the 1.5 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the 1 million is the undergrounding, or?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Schatzel.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the very detailed report.
Yeah, hopefully I take up too much of your time.
No, it was right on target.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, now is the city attorney report. Mr. Moore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are in March 2025, which means it is the exciting time, 0 days to legislative session. We will be providing you, as we do each session, in addition to your FLC or other advocacy updates you receive, we'll be sending you updates as we receive them, some bills of note that we're tracking. At present, one of them is preemption, or not a preemption, but an amendment to 76828, the sovereign immunity waiver. They're proposing to increase claims presently when a city is sued, whether somebody trips and falls on your city sidewalk, hit by a city vehicle, property damage, those sorts of torts are ordinarily right now under Florida statute limited to $200,000 per person or $300,000 per incident. And that's
how that sovereign immunity waiver works. It used to be, back in 2011, it changed to those numbers. Before that, it was 100,000 and 200,000. They're now proposing to increase that to $1 million per person. And I want to say it was like it's 1 million per person, I think 3 million per incident. And then have that phase up 5 years later in 2030 to go up by automatically slightly more. That one will have significant impacts on municipal carriers, as well as your ability to get coverage and what that coverage can look like. One of the things they're changing is from the carrier side is also, or proposing to change from the carrier side is not making that contingent on a claims bill. Because if you go over that number, you have to get a bill from the legislature. They're trying to take that element out of there as well. Some other bills, there's a live local preemptions which go to preemptions around zoning, permitting, and where structures can go. Not as much consequence in a community like this, where you're largely built out and there aren't really other zones, you just have residential, but certainly can change the landscape as you get more inland. In some other communities and their zoning restrictions, some proposals concerning permitting and everything following the storms, and obviously all things being narratives, proposals on streamlining that or simplifying it. What that looks like on our end is a few more preemptions and mandates on how that will work and timelines for how things must work. So all of that to say there's a lot going on this session. We will be tracking it very closely and providing you updates as session progresses. It starts tomorrow, so we'll see what gets through first reading, second reading. For those of you who are newer to tracking this fun process, on the front end, please be aware, just because you see something happen in one chamber doesn't mean it's all the way there. By the end of session, they have to have, if the House passes a bill, the Senate has to pass the same version and vice versa, and then ultimately the governor has the opportunity to sign or veto that. Usually there's not a lot of guesswork right now, given that we have the same party in the executive, Senate, and House. So usually leadership is pretty aligned and you know where things are going, but every now and again you have surprises. Last year's surprise, for example, there was a bill concerning short-term rentals that passed the House and Senate, and then in July the governor vetoed it. Which it was an open question how the governor would come out, and ultimately he vetoed that, which was for some an unexpected development. So we'll track it all closely and keep you updated as session progresses. Of course, if you hear of anything that is of particular interest or concern to you, whether you hear it through advocacy groups or otherwise, you want our office to provide the analysis, we will do that. On top of that, in the last month, we've received notices of claims for potential personal injury claims dating back a few years. You've provided those to your carrier, you'll receive coverage for them, and those will be defended by my firm through your insurance defense policy. But we are, I like to make sure you guys know when that stuff happens. Nothing that you need to do there, just standard run-of-the-mill personal injury claims, and they'll be handled as such, at least at this point. And then, for those of you who have been on the council for a while now, if you can believe it, May will be 3 years that our firm has been serving as your city attorney. That means our contract will be up for renewal, so 3-year term. I'm working with the manager to see if we can find terms that work for you guys, work for us, and we'll likely be bringing forward a proposal on how best we can continue to provide your service, regardless of how that proceeds. I want to say thank you because it's been my pleasure serving here and to have that opportunity of vote of confidence on the front end. And we value your business, we value working with your community, and hope to continue that relationship. And so I just wanted to let you know to look forward to something coming forward in that regard. But ultimately, I have an ethical obligation to tell you, the world is your oyster and you always have options.
Thank you, Randy. Do we have any questions or comments for the city attorney? Yes, Mr. Harper.
What is the impetus for raising the liability limitations when is there a plethora of cases that require this level of liability coverage, or is there a reason why they would go through this process of raising these limits so significantly?
There's a broader philosophical question in there that I'm going to avoid at this point, but I would say it all comes down to competing perceptions and narratives, right? From the city's perspective, we say there's only so much we can do, there's only so much coverage we can carry, and we try to make our residents whole, and we are all working very effectively to make sure we have a safe community. From the plaintiff's bar, the complaint is, you know the cost of modern healthcare. If someone so much as breaks an arm and spends a day or two in the hospital, you're barely going to be able to be made whole, especially once you account for attorney's fees on suing on those kinds of claims. And so one of the bill sponsors, who I believe is out of the Sarasota County area, commented, one, that we need to make sure that city officials take this seriously. They're not taking, some may not be taking it seriously because your worst day in court is $200,000. What's your motivation to do better? I don't subscribe to that, but that is one philosophy. I'm not even sure that they've explicitly said that. But on top of that, it is the concern of, I believe one thing the bill sponsor said is we're valuing human life too low when we're looking at that. Now, wrongful death claims are not subject to that same limitation. But, be that as it may, it's balancing city resources against people being made whole in the litigation process should they be, suffer some civil injury or tort.
When's the session over?
Not soon enough. No, it lasts roughly 2 months, and so and frankly, nothing is done until it is done. The way they it's a really cool thing. The way they end session, it's called sine die. The way that the Florida legislature set up, if you've never been to Tallahassee, the Senate chamber is across from the House chamber. There's a corridor in the middle, and there's this fun ceremony at the end where they can see somebody drop a handkerchief in the middle, and they adjourn at the same time. So one chamber never does business, while the others already adjourned. But I say that to say there are some things that happen in those last 72 hours that will mystify you. Rules get waived, things get expedited, negotiations happen. So I would never, even as we track certain things and you say, it was assigned 4 committees. For example, ordinary process. Right now, many of the bills have been assigned committees. Some have already gone through, some 1, 2, or even 3 of their committees. Some will stall in certain committees and not get on their calendar. If we get halfway through session and we say, this hasn't even made it out of its first committee, it looks dead. You never know what will happen. They may give it, revised committee assignments, only give it 1, have it go through that one, and then it on the floor. So we will try to remain as diligent as possible, but again, seems things are going to move pretty quickly this year and pretty aggressively, and preemptions and studies on cities are at the forefront. As you may be aware, last week the governor issued an executive order creating, or at least directing the establishment of a DOGE procedure on a state level that would review state university systems as well as local governments using artificial intelligence and computer optimization to analyze and identify government waste. Everybody's always in favor of that, of course. You don't want to have waste, but no one ever thinks they're the person who's wasting. I'm reminded of that. As you know, Raindrop, everything thinks it's responsible for the flood. So what you may be looking at as inefficiency in another community may very quickly find its way here. We don't know what that'll look like. And of course, as if anything should come of that executive order is scheduled to last a full year. So into February of 2026. With a monthly mandate to report back. So if there's any reports back that are made that we can discern impacts your community, we'll be sure to share that.
Other questions or comments for the city attorney? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Always value your input and nice report. All right, we're up to the city manager report. Mr. Riefler.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so the good news as far as the hurricane recovery is I have a SDE percentage of damage from the FEMA estimator tool for every property that we needed one, so we're got to that completion. Where we sit right now with 66 properties that are currently in a substantial damage status. I expect that to go down. I still have not heard from every property as far as the detailed reevaluation, and there is some room based on what the percentage of damage that the estimator tool provides versus what the actual cost of the repair is. So I do expect that number to go down some, but I'll be tracking it. And then in the process, I went back through and for every letter that the home was not substantially damaged, I checked to see if we had permit paperwork for those homes. And it turns out we had more than 50% of the homes that can do the repairs submitted paperwork, but I still had 111 that I hadn't heard anything from. So I did a courtesy letter out to the owners, just explaining, you've at this point have received a letter of not being determined substantially damaged, but we do expect that there would be repairs made at the residence, and that permits, normal permits are required to do such. So I've heard back from a couple of residents already today. I think the letters are reaching. We mailed them last week with some updated information, which is helpful. So I'm down a couple where I found out that they had less water than was estimated, and I have an explanation of why there was no permit needed. But what I do need to do is make sure that I have the story for each of these properties that we haven't heard from, just to make sure that we know what the case was, and if a permit was required, and that we show that we've gotten that paperwork.
It's just in case of a FEMA audit, is that correct?
Correct. We're just following up each step of the way, making sure that everyone's following the rules.
And what is the next step of the process if they don't report back?
So if I don't hear anything, then I'm going to go to the next step, which would just be a violation notice, which I could be incorrect. There may be something I don't know about what happened at that house that gets a violation notice, and it may just be a follow up with information so that I have that. But I just didn't want to initially send out violation notices without kind of creating a letter.
There's several homes that no one's been there at all. At some point, do we get into a situation where these homes will be taken down? What will happen?
I know of definitely one home that we did issue a violation letter requiring that it got secured because it had some broken windows. As far as I know, the house has been sitting there. I need to find out the next step of the process for these households that may be applying for some kind of federal assistance or grant funding. And I do know that if you are applying for a grant application, that you cannot demolish the structure until you've heard back about that application. That could draw it out a little. I haven't gotten to the point where I know if it's going to cause a problem where we can take action to, I guess, get further down the road with these structures that no one's going into.
One on my street in particular, the people do not live here full time. They did come in and remove some interior walls, things like that, and have left. And there's been no sign of them, and maybe we'll shake out with your letters, but there are a couple in the neighborhood that I've seen that one's already changed hands, but it's just sitting there and got it for sale, but yards overgrown. It appears as though no one's going to do it, and they're trying to flip it, and that's not likely going to happen in this environment. So it's interesting watching what's happening, and I just think we need to be careful.
Right.
I think we're going to have some homes that will have to be condemned.
I think so.
Like what kind of time frame it is, what does the code allow for, and it may be something code review addresses rather than whatever they're addressing the next step.
Right. I think, my plan was to come up and, follow up on these structures that can do the repairs, and find out what paperwork they need, and then come back to those 66 properties that are substantially damaged, find out which ones I haven't heard from there. Are you going to get into a reevaluation or what, and start establishing what is the plan for that structure? And then at the same time get into the RV situation, because we got to start establishing progress on this.
Thank you.
Councilmember Baker.
Following up on the councilwoman's about the condemned properties, there have been some properties over at Bel Air Bluffs where people got into a heavy mortgage and it's sort of like, and I don't know what, like you're saying, what happens there.
I mean, we're outside.
Yeah. I
And that's going to be a function of our codes, and given your inquiries tonight, we can make sure that's something we start looking at and start determining if we need to.
I'm not saying it's happening here, but.
No, for sure, but it can't hurt to be proactive, rather than be in the same seat 10 months later saying, why haven't we gotten the traction? We should probably start looking now and seeing if our codes need to be reviewed or revised as it relates to, the colloquial parlance of condemning structures. I want to give you, just manage expectations on the front end, whether residential or commercial. We've often talked about how sacrosanct property is in America, in Florida, and the process of getting to demolition for the government to demolish somebody's private property, even if it is in great disrepair, it's a slow march. You want to there's a lot of due process that has to be given, and a lot of findings, and sometimes very long hearings. For those of you who track such things, that giant cement structure in Clearwater that was on Drew or Cleveland for the longest, it was one of those. We know that it's being occupied by vagrants and others, and we know it's not really construction isn't advancing. It's open. What can't we just fix this? And those sort of things can take a long period of time. So we'll need to see if you have, for instance, the unsafe abatement structure code or other things incorporated in your code. But I think it's a very poignant question right now, and one that, from the legal side, working with the city manager, we can start evaluating the what if. We're not saying we're there, but what if we're there? What tools do we have, or what tools need to be put in the toolbox so that we're ready when we do get there?
Well, DeSantis did pass that bill, I don't know which one, about the squatters. You could remove that quite quickly now. Is that?
Well, I suspect you're talking about the public camping ordinance, which would not, or statute, which would not impact this actually, because that's about removing people from public property, if they're private property.
I believe there was something passed last year about evicting people that are not.
That may be the case. As a local government attorney, I'm less concerned with the residential evictions, but all the same, we'll have to look at whether the issue is occupancy or just derelict structures that are unsafe for the community as a whole. We can start looking at those sort of issues and get ahead of those. But of course, you will continue to have your existing codes on nuisance, whether the grass grows tall, vermin, all those sorts of things. We would continue to track and implement your code or enforce your codes that already exist. But those address the symptoms, not the core issue. If the property is altogether abandoned, whether held by a bank or otherwise. But going back to the mortgage crisis of 2009 to 11, I can tell you when it's a financial institution that owns it, getting notice and getting action is much more difficult than when you have even an absentee property.
Okay. So and then moving down all the beach accesses, the Bel Air Shore beach accesses are open since their last meeting, which was about 2 weeks ago. So I started pricing out installing sod where we lost all the grass in each of these accesses, and as far as replacing with installation, every one of these quotes are coming back to do all the areas over the $25,000 threshold. I propose either we do it in-house with our staff, which obviously is going to take a little more time and save money, is one option as far as we just order the sod per park and we throw it down and have it, put it in that way. Or I could get underneath that threshold at about, the lowest we're going to get is $1 per square foot installed. I could get the main areas, when I say the main area, I mean the west of the parking lots, and leaving the side strips kind of to fill in and have staff piece that together with seed and our own sod that we would have delivered. So I feel, as far as getting grass back in these accesses, that we can have a turnkey operation of installing the 3 main areas of each access for under that $25,000 price point, and then fill in the rest. But I need to understand kind of what the council has planned as far as these beach accesses. If our goal is to improve them any more, if we're just trying to get them back to closer to what they look like. Because I do worry though, replace this grass and with landscaping and sod, we get another flood, it's all gone again.
session, because some of the walls are still collapsed from the property owners. So putting side down there is gonna be, you know, we're gonna be like 10 feet this way out, something like that. I mean, our maintenance staff has done a great job getting them back to getting on the beach, you know. They look great, in my opinion, it's all sand, but, quick question, $25,000.
Well, let's start, Mike, please.
I'm sorry.
What's the approximate square footage required at this point for all three parks?
So if you were to do all the main areas, you're looking at about 18,000 and 19,000 square feet. You throw in the side areas and maybe another 8,000. They're kind of patchy. The fronts are in pretty good condition. The water didn't really kill any of the grass up on the front right of ways.
The front being the sidewalk?
Yeah, up by
Sidewalk.
all over.
Everybody good with taking it to the work session?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Anything else?
Let's talk about the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding.
Can I just add one more thing to that? Just have we considered maybe just throwing a shell down like we have in some of our landscape areas along the roadway rather than doing sod and having to maintain grass? We do a shell bed instead of, you know, like we have along the roadways. You have shell everywhere else in the city.
Great idea.
Just to,
I'd be interested in that too.
yeah.
Good.
Because
It's
then
on
you
the
don't
work
have,
session, right?
then, yeah, and then you're not working, just to try to get a place for that, because then we're not maintaining it.
Okay. I'll diagram out some different layouts. That's pricing. So the Gulf Boulevard, they are working on our legal agreements as far as putting the equipment for the phase 2 in the Gulf Boulevard right away. I expect that'll have to come to as an agenda item. And I did write an email out to my contact with Duke asking for some kind of guarantee that we're going to start phase 1 in March. I did not get a response, but my plan is if we do not start this month, that they come to the next meeting to just give us an overview of what's going on. Because it has dragged out for quite some time. And I have a lot of residents on the south side of the city getting to inquire because they haven't seen any kind of action for so long. The stormwater improvement project, that we're actually at about 85% done with the CIP lining. We're going to have a meeting next week to discuss what needs to be done to wrap up those repairs on the pipes. I went into the 7th Street outfall. There's a valve there. And we have it right now where we realize that the water is getting around the valve. It's not working correctly. So I was able to pull out the inside of the valve where we can see where it goes into the pipe, where it could possibly be sealed to make it work. I'm having our engineering firm look at it to either determine if there's a way we can seal it using the current valve, or if while we have this CMPB lining crew out, if it's something that we want to add additionally to extend out and try to make a better situation at that 7th Street valve. And that's the valve that is very low, that periodically takes, doesn't always evacuate all the way. So I do have them looking at the size of the pipes, the volume, and the pressure to see if there's something we can do to fix the valve and make it a better situation while we're in there.
Question on that. Yes. So you're saying the lining, isn't that brand new pipe that we put in?
That's section from the manhole. That is a new pipe.
That's all new pipe, and you put the lining in there because it's damaged already, or?
It would be to go from the closest pipe segment to the nearest manhole to the outfall, to establish a seal and extend it out away from the seawall to the valve. That's just an idea. I want them to kind of look at it to understand it.
Okay.
But I did want to, if we do need to, if CIPP lining is the best option,
right,
while we have the contractor mobilized, I just want to
the same, a similar issue on 9th too then?
9th they're lining it and they're gonna put that exact same valve back into it.
Okay.
So, that's something when we meet next week, I wanna have like a site visit at each outfall to make sure that the valves get put back in correctly and just.
So you think once that lining is in and that's sealed, that's gonna be, we're not gonna get any leakage around that?
Right. And then we're still exploring what we want to get right now.
To 7th Street, did we reuse a valve? Is that why it's a little quirky?
7th Street has a valve. It was put in when they replaced the seawall, they installed the valve. What the contractor did is he sealed that valve into the seawall, and it's getting around that. So we either need to establish a seal by getting inside, that's why we moved the inside of it, by cementing where the valve comes into the pipe, or we do some kind of pipe inside of the pipe that extends out that creates a solid seal out of the seawall.
It seems like that should go back to the contractor.
I know you were trying to bring it back to the contractor. Did he respond?
I explored it. He felt it was out of warranty and that there was no, I don't know, the way he did it is that how he does it in Tampa, and that he felt like it was going to work, but I don't know.
Is this a faulty installation? And did we approve that method, or did he do that on his own?
He did it, but the engineer on the project approved the way he did it. Where this is how he was installing in the city of Tampa. But again, it's not working correctly, so.
And the engineer agrees that your assessment is that it's failing. He agrees it's failing.
Right, it is. It definitely is failing. But from the way the valve was installed, it was put into the wall and the concrete was poured around it. But we feel the concrete was completely encased, so it's coming up underneath.
How long ago was that?
2023.
Okay. It seems to me that there should at least, if nothing else, be some shared costs on this. They should work with us instead of just making us keep that one, because at the end of the day, they installed it, and it was the method they recommended. So I don't know, just my 2 cents on that one.
Seems to me too, it seems like a faulty installation, but Attorney Moore, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, when an engineer says it's approved and the contractor follows the engineer design, we have a.
Wait a minute, first of all, it sounds like the contractor decided he's gonna do it
The
a
engineer
different
said,
method.
the engineer approved it.
Yeah, I don't think it's clear yet.
Who hired the engineer?
Is this a work session topic?
I don't even know that it's a work session topic. In terms of like what you, the policymakers, can meaningfully do. To answer your question, I think the discussion you're having just as a sidebar here is emblematic of where we stand. Our firm has been involved in this analysis. We've been advising Kyle where he's asked, and he has looked at this because of some of the factual questions, posture, and things that have been made. He's proceeding in the manner as described. But that's where we are aware of this, and we have been, we've reviewed the documents and provided insight on what was done and what we're recommends.
That's helpful.
Fair enough.
We're glad to know that.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, our next planning and zoning meeting is going to be March 12th. We're going to cover the second half of chapter 94, which is the zoning chapter. We made pretty good progress on our first meeting. We also have another meeting towards the end of the month for the audit committee. That's on March 20th at 5 p.m. And then we expect to come back for the April council meeting with the approval of the audit. And I will comment that Wells, Hauser, and Schatzel, they spent a long time, probably about 4 weeks in our facility, on site. This is their first time go around as far as doing the audit, so it's a little bit more time consuming to get all their format in order and all that.
420 hours.
Yeah, they invested a lot of time, which is good. So we got them moving well. And then the 75th anniversary banners, we have those, and they're going to be putting them up this week. So those should be nice. They're 5 feet in length, so it should stand out a little more. And this month's work session, we're planning on Wednesday, March 19th.
Can you say something about the next week? The date?
I shot a text to the engineering firm asking if they had a timeline for the geo. I haven't heard back. That's what I think is the last time update. And as the chief mentioned, March 27th, we're going to do another hurricane preparedness expo, 6 to 8. It's a Thursday night. A lot of the same companies. We have insurance representatives. We're going to have the county, emergency management, floodplain management, the Pinellas Fire Rescue District, and we're going to talk a lot about what happened last season, lessons learned, and do what we do every year is try to prepare people for what to expect at hurricane season.
Any questions or comments for the city manager? No? All right, thank you very much, Kyle. Renee? Oh, I didn't see your hand. You have to raise it.
I know. On the 9th Street pump station, what the results and studies, was everything okay? Or ready to move forward?
I haven't, as soon as I get the results for the geotechnical study, I will schedule them to come back and present.
Hey,
I have nothing to report.
nothing to report. Any questions or comments for the city clerk? All right. We are on to the consent agenda, item number 9. This is for approval of the January 6, 20. February 3rd. That's right. February 3rd, 2024 City Council meeting minutes.
February 3rd, 2025.
I'll tell you what. It's only 7:08 too. Anyway, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion is made by Frank Baker, seconded by Jody Shirley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda passes. Sorry about following that one up. All right, now we're on to the regular agenda, item number 10. This is for consideration of resolution 2025-01. Mr. Mora.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Resolution 2025-01, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, amending the annual budget for fiscal year 2024-2025, providing for increases in the allocations made for the wages and related costs for the city manager, city clerk, and community services administrator, and establishing an effective date. This has been a reading of Resolution 2025-01 by title only. Mr. Mayor, this resolution was prepared in follow-up to the guidance that this council has already provided concerning the salary adjustments for the identified positions. In reviewing the statutes, it was my advice that you, to the extent this constitutes a budget amendment, it be done in the same manner in which the budget was adopted. And so the budget having been adopted in a resolution, this is a resolution formally making those findings and amendments, and those are the sorts of things that gentlemen like who came earlier, who spoke on your audit, they love to see. So anyhow, that's what this is. The backing of the identified changes, those were, I believe, 10%, and Kyle, you can feel free to correct the FDB, are identified in the backing materials there. As you can see, the adjustment in the amended budget columns. So all of this is in the materials which were already published and posted on the website as part of the agenda. So nothing further to state there, but open for discussion and, of course, public comment before adoption here.
All right. Before we open up the floor for comments from the council, let's go to the citizens. Would anyone like to comment on this particular item? All right, citizen comments are now closed. Council, I'm going to need a motion to approve resolution 2025-01.
Motion.
Motion is made by Frank Baker. Do I have a
speaks for itself as written. I think we should vote.
Comments,
Agreed.
discussion? Anyone else? All right, Renee, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Harper.
Yes.
Councilmember Elliott.
Yes.
Councilmember Shirley.
Aye.
Councilmember Wellings.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Roberts.
Aye.
And Mayor Gaddis.
Aye, so the resolution passes unanimously. And just to get that happened there. All right, now we are on to item number 11. This is for consideration of resolution 2025-02. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, amending the annual budget for fiscal year 2023-2024, providing for a series of adjustments to reflect actual expenditures and financial records during the 2023-2024 fiscal year, including adjustments within the general fund, adjustments to the stormwater fund, adjustments to the capital projects fund, and the implementation of certain inter-fund transfers, and establishing an effective date. This has been a reading of resolution 2025-02 by title only. This is the kind of resolution that's so nice we did it twice. Looking at having affected the resolution we were just looking at on the budget amendment for this fiscal year and reviewing recent records, we realized that at the end of the fiscal year 2023-2024, in your November meeting, the budget adjustment had been made for all those identified things, and that's customary to do at the end of the fiscal year. And you're truing up to what actually happened, and that's what that was. Again, as a matter of prudence, and to avoid any other issues, I advised that this be done by resolution as well, to document that the council had already approved and directed this, but make it a more official acting form of the resolution consistent with our ordinary procedures. So that's this is one of those things that I would say falls into a housekeeping matter. But again, leave it here for your review and for public comment before any official action.
All right, let's go to the citizens for comments. Anyone would like to speak on this resolution? All right, citizen comments are now closed. Council, motion?
Motion.
Motion was made by Frank Baker. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Harper. Mr. Baker, you have the floor.
My only question is, couldn't we have done these two resolutions together and taken the words of our president, one big, beautiful resolution?
No, you want to make sure they're distinct acts because these are two different budgets. One's for the 2023-2024 and one's for the 24-25. You avoid any issues that way, and if there is an issue with one, it doesn't impair the other. So it's best when doing these sorts of things to make them their own separate acts. And also for your legislative discretion, if this had been something perhaps more controversial, you don't want your hey, I support this, but it's tied to this completely different thing, and now I can't support it. And so it allows you folks to exercise your independent judgment on each issue.
Thank you for your explanation. I think we should move.
Any other comments? All right, Renee, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Harper.
Yes.
Councilmember Elliott.
Yes.
Councilmember Shirley.
Aye.
Councilmember Wellings.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Roberts.
Aye.
And Mayor Gaddis.
Aye, so the resolution passes unanimously, and thank you for keeping our house clean. All right, we are now on to item number 12. This is consideration of authorizing the city manager to grant encroachment easement to Russell and Deborah Brown at 501 Harbor Drive. Mr. Moore, you put this on the agenda.
Yes, I did, as I was voluntold to do. What you have before you is an encroachment easement. There's a property owner with the subject property identified here, 501 Harbor Drive, looking to make a property transfer, a transaction selling the property, and in doing so, their title search company identified an issue. This issue, to me, is emblematic of the nothing's a problem until someone makes it a problem maxim, in that the issue underlying here is one that traces back decades to how the city was platted and how certain grants were made. And basically, when you take the historical records of the city and you take the current records of the property appraiser and you take people's land grants and surveys and the like, for properties on a particular stretch of the intercoastal, the city's right to submerge land and otherwise it extends onto their properties. And so seawalls were built sort of on city property in theory because the city was part of a grant that extended to those islands out in the intercoastal. And you can see that in the, I believe they were back, I don't know if the staff materials included it, I don't believe it does. So, we can certainly provide the graphic if need be. This seeks to clean that up because the seawall's already there. The seawalls are there on all of these properties, and again, because it's property by property, that encroachment is larger in some areas and smaller in some. This affects more than one property in the city. In speaking with the legal counsel representing the property owner trying to affect the transaction, they wanted to clean this up. Looking at the charter code and other restrictions, my advice was without selling, transferring, giving away any land, we can acknowledge that we do not dispute that infrastructure is there, and that we will allow it by easement to continue to be there. It just recognizes things and it allows them to quiet the title for purposes of the transaction, and that's what this document reflects. And without getting into all the nitty-gritty of it all, that is the summary. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Mora.
And I believe their legal counsel is present if they desire to speak, of course, during public comment, they're free to do so.
Okay. Would any citizen like to comment on this item?
If I get voluntold, you have to be too.
That's right. I appreciate it, Mr. Moore. And I do appreciate all your hard work on this and doing it so quickly. And Kyle as well, City Manager report. Brian Ungs, 625 Court Street, here on behalf of your residents, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, Russ and Deborah. As Mr. Morris stated, they are in the process of conveying their property. Their property was substantially damaged, as so many others were during the hurricane. So they've had a rough go of it since the hurricanes in September and October. In this process, unfortunately, as Mr. Morris said, a historic issue that has been around for many, many, many decades, going back to at least the 1940s, was flagged as a title exception in the title search, and that's partly due to how sophisticated now our property appraiser is with mapping on their site. But what essentially happened was when Bel Air Beach was platted, there were property owners, and this affects dozens of properties in Bel Air Beach, where the seawalls were built on sovereign submerged lands that are owned by the state. In 1953, the trustees of the state of Florida, in this document, dedicated those seawalls and the pavers, small strip of essentially what are my client's backyard, to the town of Bel Air Beach. So they were dedicated via this deed document that was reported in 1953. This easement document has been approved by the City Council in the recent past. A project that was handled by my law partner, Carlton Ward. I don't have that exact address, but we use the same form that the City Council has previously used. I don't know if this is going to be an ongoing issue where you're going to have every other property that's affected by this coming for these types of easements, but essentially this has been my client's property for years and years. It's their seawall, it's a little bit of pavers for their pool deck area, and it's been maintained by them. The city doesn't pay taxes on it, and so this easement would effectively allow them to maintain the seawall and those pavers, and would allow that to continue for whomever purchased the property. Essentially, it's a cleanup.
And Mr. Ung's comments without interrupting reminds me just in the precision of language, it is not clear that the city owns it. It was dedicated to the city, but in terms of like fee simple ownership that we talk about, it's not clear that it's city property. And so one of the concerns I had, this was an issue that came up quick, as you can imagine, and all of you have been part of real estate transactions, things move quickly. And as your legal counsel, I said, I'm not comfortable without full title searches, surveys, and everything else saying we do or don't own it. So rather than get into any kind of dispute on who owns inch to inch where, to the extent we have a right, we're allowing them access in the form of those pavers, and that's what and that seawall, and that's what this legal document intends to do.
Who has the obligation to maintain that seawall?
Let's hold off a minute. We're on citizen comments right now.
Yeah, that was my fault for interrupting. So I apologize. But we can,
and then once we have a motion, we'll come back to council discussion.
And just anticipating that type of comment, so as you can see, the easement agreement requires indemnification from the property owner to maintain that and to indemnify the city from any issues that arise on that small little piece. And if you look at the encroachment easement, you'll actually see the survey, so you can see the actual kind of physical dimensions of what we're talking about. It's almost like a little triangle, a very narrow, thin triangle that runs along the seawall there, and it gets more narrow as you head head actually northwest, or northwest. So again, hopefully Mr. Moore can answer any other questions we have, but we appreciate, again, Mr. Riefler and Mr. Moore and their very quick assistance with this very unique issue.
Thank you, Mr. Rumpf. I appreciate you clearing the air a little bit about that. Any other citizens like to speak? All right, the citizen comments are now closed. Council, I'm going to need a motion to authorize city manager to grant this encroachment easement to the Browns at 501 Harbor Drive.
So moved.
Second. That was Jody Shirley, and second by Harlan. Yes, okay. Councilmember Shirley, you have the floor.
I think if this is the easiest way to clean this up, we should grant the easement, but my first response, and it sounds like it's a long process, but would be to figure out how to abandon any ownership we have, any ownership opportunity the city has to that, and grant the ownership to the landowner. There's no need for us to have access to their backyard or their seawall. I understand we own it right now, or potentially own it, we don't know. But I think in the end, when we finish these, and I know Attorney Moore is probably going crazy, but we should not keep ownership of it, in my opinion. But I know that that's probably a longer process. This is a quick fix to do the easement, and I'll hand that over to you.
And I appreciate that, and I can say that does seem like a potentially sensible solution. One of the concerns I had as your legal counsel is in your charter it says if you were to ever sell, transfer, or give away any land belonging to the city, that has to be voted on by the public at large, which certainly would not work on the timeline that these folks are working on for this particular transaction. Also, we would need to make sure if we were doing that we cover all our bases. And again, on the time this issue was first presented to me in the last week, and my concern was, while we don't have a need to enter a public need or use to enter identified at this moment, and again, I'm not waiving any ability to assert that exists otherwise for the client, but while there may not be an apparent one in this moment, without knowing for certain what we do own, I was not comfortable saying, yeah, I'm sure we could find a path forward to give that away. And I also don't have as much history on if we've ever used this for any public use beyond its original dedication. Whether that be in the form of shore hardening or other things. I didn't have enough facts. But the concern that I had in terms of this particular transaction was looking in your charter when it talks about giving away land that belongs to the city. There's talk of a ballot measure, and that just was not on this fact pattern. That may be something the city chooses to pursue in the future. But it is owed in large part to technological advances. Why this is, when you start putting in all the GIS data that meets and bounds, you get far more precise data than you used to. People would just assume, okay, it's generally in this area, but it must be along the seawall. And now you start seeing, actually, it's a few feet beyond that, some properties, and even more. So that's how we find ourselves here, and why this is the best solution without creating more problems. And that was a concern on both sides, was protecting this so there wasn't some kind of title defect after the transaction.
I think the same issues came up the last time this happened. It may not be the most thorough way, but it's probably the cleanest way that we have the tools.
At the moment, yes, sir.
Keep the transaction.
Any other comments on this? Yes.
My only issue when I started looking at this easement was that we were not conveying an interest without also conveying the obligations that go with it. And so as long as everyone's satisfied that that's the case, then I certainly support it. And to the Browns, I wanted to tell you that your house was one of my very favorite, or is one of my very favorite, and so I'm so sorry for your loss.
Mr. Baker.
Just for clarity about the charter, we don't believe we own this property, right?
Yes, at present, I don't have reason to believe we own it, but what we were going to do, the way that you would affect that is a quitclaim deed, and a quitclaim deed says, if I own something, whatever interest I own, it's yours. And I wasn't comfortable with the legal approach of saying, well, in the event we did own it, and I don't presently have reason to believe, but I was operating on, hours of information.
I just don't want people coming in here saying we're giving away property or whatever. And these people have been.
I agree with you.
Okay, it's got to stop. I mean, but in my opinion, it's really abandoned our property. If we did have any ownership, and they took care of it. So
I understand that perspective. My job is to protect all your
I
rights and
understand,
claims.
and I want to hear.
I'm not going to endorse necessarily, but I understand the concern.
Any other comments?
I just think, I'm sorry, I just wanted to thank Attorney Moore for coming up with and with the claimants, the components, attorney also, but just coming up with a good legal solution in consideration of the concerns that you have.
Frankly, I just think it's a testament to your community. Your community works well with your residents to get to yes. And it's great when we're able to get there with rational parties on both sides, but it's more a function of how your community operates, the leadership and your manager, and really trying to get the residents where they need to go, especially at this time. So I would commend Kyle and your community at large.
Councilmember Harper.
My only comment would be, I think this would be a worthy workshop topic, because if this is the second property this easement, type of encroachment easement has happened, then we probably should research and figure out how to make a longer-term solution for the entire waterfront community that has this.
Just one last, as part of that work session, is maybe looking at the opportunity to treat it like you do when you vacate right away or something like that. Just food for thought.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no other comments, I'm just going to do a voice vote. You good with that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Reefer, you're authorized to proceed. Congratulations to the Browns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? See any takers on that one? Well, let's go to city council comments. Let's start with Councilmember Frank Mayer.
Well, I wasn't going to comment, but you seemed so distressed last month when I said I didn't have any comments. I figured I had to get approved. I'm sure the mayor's going to comment on the nourishment project and the letter from the Big C, and I went to Senator Scott about that. But I've been working with Senator Scott's office on FEMA for the last couple of years, and one of the things that was brought up at a work session in January, I brought it up about removing our look-back period to 0. The mayor said, is that going to impact our CRS rate, community rating system, and raise the rates for the insurance? And no one had the answer, so I went to FEMA, and you're supposed to get an answer in 24 to 48 hours, which is a joke. Okay, I've called them every 3 days. Okay, left the same message, emailed them repeatedly. I did get somebody from FEMA that's helped me out on other projects. He's not an expert anyway. He says on the CRS, he says it may affect your rate if you go to 0. But he says you're probably aware that you're probably not getting the discount because that's in the courts right now. So he says, I don't want to give you a yes or no. So then I went to Scott's, Senator Rick Scott's office, and I have a list of questions for them about FEMA, look back, 50% rule, and everything like that. And I was supposed to get a meeting with the FEMA director. That's been put on hold. And now, the simple question I asked about the CRS rating, Mr. Scott, they won't answer him. And that's really a shot below the belt, in my opinion, because he's our elected United States senator. And when he can't get an answer, that's pretty big. Hopefully, Mr. Musk goes in there and rips apart FEMA too. The other thing I just wanted to bring up, I'm already having problems with Elevate Florida with their expediency and all like that. It looked like it was going to work really quickly. Now they don't have return calls. And that's only been open for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to get into that tomorrow. That's about it.
Councilmember Shaw Elliott.
Well, I wanted to renew my an invitation to the community to a free event, and that is the Sierra Club is sponsoring a program on March 18th. The details are listed on our website, and you're welcome to go there and click through to the reservation, but it is a free event, and it is for informational purposes on how to rebuild sustainably. And we're going to have representatives from people that have experienced all phases of the disaster, including those that have made less than substantial repairs, and your former council member will be talking about his experience in elevating his home by raising it. I'll be presenting about the experience of rebuilding on the existing foundation. We'll have experts there and a lot of discussion about the programs that are available for assistance. So I welcome the communities to attend.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Shirley.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Councilmember Harper.
No comments tonight.
Councilmember Welling.
No comments today.
Vice Mayor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of quick things. We currently have a committee that is in dire need of additional citizens and support. I believe they're down 2 full-time members and 2 part-time members, and that is our Parks and Rec Committee. So I know we have it advertised on the website, which is great, but I'd like to make a plea tonight to anybody that is hearing this or listening or checking later. Anybody that's ever had a thought about joining a city committee, this would be a great starter. If some people are maybe a little bit reluctant because they may not be that familiar with the city, the Parks and Rec Committee is the perfect starting committee for someone out there. And we really do need some help. It's 99% positive received tasks and things that they do. There's not a lot of pressure. It's mostly fun. So I know the people on that committee, I know one of them pretty well, that would really love to see people step up and help our city in those areas. We've got a lot of areas that require some tasks to be done. Everybody wants our city to look better and be more beautiful, and it's difficult when they're so understaffed, even on the committee, in addition to trying to get additional volunteers. So anybody out there who's listening to this or later on is checking it out, if you have any questions, you can talk with the city, find out more information about that particular committee. But they are really looking for additional help, and it would be greatly, greatly appreciated. So just wanted to get that information out there. And I'd like to recommend that we do on council a paid study. In a previous life, I worked with other organizations where you would, I don't know, every 5 years, every 7 years, do a paid study. And I think the biggest reason we should consider this is when we've gone through in the past, here relatively recently, trying to make sure that we have salaries that are set at the right spot, and we're continually adjusting those on the fly. Effectively, a pay study, most organizations will pay fairly significant money to companies that do that for them if they have hundreds or even a couple of thousand employees. We have a very small staff. We can do that internally. And effectively what you're looking at is what are all of your position descriptions, and we set a pay range, basically a minimum and a maximum. And we set that based on areas that we want to look at and we think is important, what other cities that are competitive with us are paying their staff. We really want to make sure that we don't have anybody cherry picking staff from us. So the pay study comes about, you study it, you evaluate it, and you say, okay, from this point forward, the minimum salary we're going to offer anybody in this particular position is X, and the maximum is Y. And then we establish, the city establishes criteria regarding, what's important regarding getting off of the minimum number. So you're going to have some evaluation there. It could be based on how long has the individual worked in a similar position in their previous employment, things like that. But at least then we have a min and a max for the position, and I think it's going to help the council with some of the positions that we work with the salaries on. It will also help the city manager regarding the salaries that he currently works with. And so when they become open, we then know the salary range that's available to us, and we know that it's a good salary range that we can offer a salary to somebody who's going to be enticed to work for us. So I'd like to recommend that we put a salary study on the next work session of the discussion on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Roberts. As Mr. Baker mentioned, there was a couple of letters that were addressed to the president. I believe everyone received a copy of them before they were signed. Is that correct?
They also got them after.
Okay, all right, great. So those letters were actually, I put those together, but that was based upon a Zoom meeting I had with Big C after a meeting we had a month ago. And so all the mayors on the barrier islands got together, and they had discussions with their city managers about what was wrong with FEMA, what problems they were having, and we drew up that letter concerning FEMA with the 4 big asks. And, just as Mr. Baker was saying a while ago, there's no clear definition about the discount versus your look-back period. And that was one of the items that I asked for. Was, hey, can we please have a real formula, something that's tangible, so that if we do have a 1 year or a 5 year or whatever, however many years it is, that it's justifiable to the community instead of where we're at right now, where everyone just wishes we didn't have one. So that was very important. And the super big ask was the raising the 50% rule. And the reason, my explanation for that is that homes depreciate every year. If you're not renovating them, you're not doing upgrades, little by little they depreciate. There may not be anything wrong with structure, but the value keeps going down every year. At the same time, the cost of repairs goes up. And so I'm assuming that whenever the 50% rule was created, it was probably a little gap between depreciation and inflation. But over time, that gap gets wider and wider, and it sucks more and more residents into it whenever we have an event like this. So that was one that all the beach mayors agreed on, and it was very easy to create that one. And going over to the beach nourishment, that one has always been near and dear to my heart. You guys know that's been one of my primary focuses as far as my relationship with the county goes, relationship with the state goes, and my not having a relationship with the Fed goes. So I asked the president for 2 more big asks, which number one was to reduce the length of the easement from perpetual to 2 years, but it would self-renew every time a project started back up. And so that way, let's say we're on a 6-year cycle, which is actually what we're supposed to have. You would have 2 years on an easement, and then you would have 4 years off the easement. And then the really big ask was to completely eliminate the public access on private property. Because if you go down into Indian Shores, Indian Rocks Beach, there are many, many homes where that easement literally comes right up to their back door. And the federal government says for you to receive that sand, you have to allow strangers to walk into your backyard, and you can't do anything about it. So this is the reason why they're not willing to sign. The county right now the county's making a big push with their own project to try to get easements signed. They got it half right. They got it half wrong. The half right is they're not requiring the public access piece of it. So you would think that that would be a nice carrot to make people want to sign, but unfortunately, they're also asking for perpetual easements. That right there is a deal breaker for many, many people south of us. We'll see what happens. Congresswoman Luna assured me that she has transmitted digital copies of the documents to the president, or at least the president's liaison. And the hard copies, they were overnight expressed in a big red envelope. And I'm sure the bomb sniffing dogs are all over them right now as we speak. And then Senator Scott has also indicated that he is helping. Is that correct? Yes. So hopefully between these three paths, maybe someone will be concerned enough and realize that this isn't just for us. This is for the entire country. This is for anyone that lives in a flood zone, anyone that needs beach nourishment. These things are not, they're not just asked for Pinellas County or for Bel Air Beach. This would benefit everyone who lives on the coast. So, and that's all I have. Would anyone like a motion? Make a motion.
Can I ask a question about what you were talking about?
What's that?
Am I allowed to ask a question about what you were talking about?
You sure can.
Okay.
Will you please speak into the microphone?
Yeah, you mentioned the 2-year easement. Did the mayors give you any feedback that would be accepted? Because I know they've been really struggling to get to people. So
right now, we're trying to come up with something that we think is reasonable. And the reason the 2 years was thrown out there is because we believe that that's more than enough time to start and complete a huge project like this.
Right.
It really doesn't even take that long, but if it's a 2-year easement, you can do all 3 areas.
Yeah, I get your logic. I was just kind of curious if they had gotten any feedback that the residents would actually sign it. Like if that's the thing that tips them over the edge.
Well, it's going to be much easier to approach than
Yes.
something like this. So we thought that was probably as close as we would get to actually getting the signatures.
Thanks.
Mr. Baker, you had a motion on the floor to adjourn.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, good night. Thank you.